I never thought the people who gave me life would risk my daughters. The day I brought my premature baby Lily home from the hospital should have been filled with joy, not terror. She was so tiny, but fought so hard to survive those first weeks. We had everything set up perfectly, all her monitors connected, her special formula prepared. When the alarm pierced the air that afternoon, I dropped everything and ran to her nursery. There stood my mother, Lily's oxygen monitor unplugged, my brother Ethan's phone charging in its place. Her words still haunt me. He has an important call. What happened next changed our family forever and taught me what it truly means to be a mother. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs from the beginning. My pregnancy with Lily was difficult from day one. At 32 years old, my doctor had warned me about potential complications due to my history of high blood pressure, but nothing prepared me for what happened. I was only 28 weeks along when my water broke during a quiet dinner with my husband Jeff. The rush to the hospital, the frantic calls to family, the doctors speaking in hushed, urgent tones around me, it all happened in a blur. When they performed the emergency C-section, Lily weighed just 2 pounds 4 ounces, her skin nearly translucent, her tiny chest working overtime with each breath. "She's a fighter," the NICU nurse told me when I was finally able to see her the next day, tubes and wires connecting her small body to a wall of monitors. But she's got a long road ahead. That road stretched into 2 months, in the NICU. Jeff tried to be there as much as possible, but his job as a pharmaceutical sales representative kept him on the road. He'd managed to take 2 weeks off when Lily was born, but his territory covered 3 states, and his company made it clear that extended leave wasn't an option if he wanted to keep his position. "I'm sorry, babe," he said during one of our late night calls, his voice heavy with guilt. "I know this isn't fair to you." "It's okay," I lied, watching Lily sleep in her incubator. "We're making it work." And somehow, we did. I became an expert on premature infant care. I learned how to read oxygen saturation levels, how to recognize signs of respiratory distress, how to properly position her tiny body to help her underdeveloped lungs. By the time the doctors discussed discharge plans, I had a notebook filled with instructions and emergency protocols. We converted our home office into a nursery, complete with the specialized monitoring equipment Lily would need. The insurance covered most of it, but we still spent thousands getting everything exactly right. Jeff installed a new electrical system to handle the additional power requirements and made sure every outlet had backup batteries in case of power failures. What we didn't account for was my family. My relationship with my parents, Martha and Harold, had always been complicated. Growing up, I never quite measured up to their expectations. My younger brother, Ethan, was different. 4 years into their marriage, when my mother had given up hope of having another child, Ethan arrived. The golden boy, the miracle child. While I struggled through college on scholarships and part-time jobs, they paid Ethan's full tuition at an expensive private university. When I bought my first car, a used Honda with over 100,000 miles, they surprised Ethan with a brand new Jeep for his 16th birthday. The pattern continued into adulthood, with my achievements acknowledged with polite interest, while Ethan's smallest successes warranted family celebrations. I'd made peace with it, more or less. Jeff understood the dynamics and helped me establish healthy boundaries. We saw my parents on major holidays, maintained cordial phone calls every couple of weeks, and that was enough. But then, Lily changed everything. "We're coming to help," my mother announced over the phone 2 days before Lily's discharge date. It wasn't a question. "Mom, that's not necessary. We've got everything under control." Carol Ann, she used my full name, a sure sign she wouldn't be deterred. "You have no idea what you're in for. A premature baby needs experienced hands. Your father and I will stay for a week, at least." I wanted to argue, but was exhausted from the daily hospital visits and preparing for Lily's homecoming. Jeff was scheduled for an important sales conference the same week Lily would come home, a trip he'd already postponed once during her NICU stay. "It's probably for the best," Jeff said when I told him about my parents' plans. "You shouldn't be alone that first week." "I know, but my parents." I trailed off, not wanting to revisit old wounds. "They love you and Lily. It'll be fine," he assured me, ever the optimist. The day we brought Lily home, My parents arrived an hour after we did, with Ethan in tow. "Hope you don't mind," my father said, as he clapped Ethan on the shoulder. "The boy's going through a rough patch. Julie broke things off, and he needed a change of scenery." Julie. The girlfriend I'd heard about but never met. The one he'd been dating for all of 3 months. "He can stay in the guest room with us," my mother added, already wheeling her suitcase toward the stairs. "Actually, we set up the guest room with a hospital-grade air purifier for Lily," I explained. "Her lungs are still developing, and the doctor wants—" "Well, where are we supposed to sleep then?" My mother interrupted. "I thought you and Dad could use the pull-out sofa in the living room," I said, bouncing Lily gently as she started to fuss. "We weren't expecting Ethan." My mother's mouth tightened. "I see. It's cool," Ethan shrugged. "I can crash on the floor or whatever." Jeff, sensing the tension, quickly offered. "The basement's finished. There's a daybed down there. It's not fancy, but—" "Perfect." Ethan brightened, already heading toward the basement door with his duffel bag. I looked down at Lily, her tiny face scrunched in displeasure at the noise and commotion. This wasn't how I'd imagined our homecoming, not even close. As my parents settled in, and Jeff showed Ethan the basement, I took Lily to her nursery for her scheduled medication and feeding. The room was exactly as we'd prepared it, peaceful, organized, with every piece of medical equipment within easy reach. "This is our sanctuary," I whispered to her as I carefully measured out her medication. "Just you and me, little fighter." I had no idea that in just a few days, that sanctuary would become a battlefield, with Lily caught in the middle. By day 3 of my parents' visit, I was already regretting my decision to let them stay. What I had hoped would be helpful support had quickly devolved into a constant stream of criticism, and second, guessing. "You're holding her too much," my mother commented, as I cradled Lily after her morning feeding. "She'll never learn to self-soothe if you pick her up every time she makes a sound." "Mom, she's not even supposed to be born yet," I replied, trying to keep my voice level. "Preemies need extra physical contact for development." "Well, we didn't know any of that fancy science when you and Ethan were babies, and you both turned out just fine." I bit back the response that Ethan, at 24, was still living at home and had cycled through 3 different majors before dropping out of college entirely. This wasn't the time. The carefully structured routine I had established for Lily, the one the NICU nurses had helped me develop and the pediatrician had approved, was constantly interrupted. My father would turn on the television at full volume during Lily's nap time. My mother would question why Lily needed to be fed every 2 hours on the dot. "Babies eat when they're hungry," she insisted. "All this scheduling is unnecessary. Preemies have different needs, Mom," I explained, for what felt like the 100th time. "Her stomach is tiny, and she can't take much at once. If we wait until she's crying from hunger, she burns too many calories and can lose weight." The worst part was Ethan. While my parents at least attempted to help in their misguided way, Ethan treated our house like a hotel. He slept until noon, left wet towels on the bathroom floor, and invited friends over without asking. Twice, I found empty beer cans in the nursery trash can. Jeff called every evening, his voice a lifeline to sanity. "How's it going?" he asked, the background noise of his hotel room barely masking the concern in his voice. "It's—" I paused, not wanting to worry him when he was focused on his presentation. "It's challenging. Your mom taking over? You could say that." I lowered my voice, standing in our bedroom with the door closed while my mother sat with Lily. "She thinks all the medical protocols are newfangled nonsense," as she puts it. Classic Martha. Jeff sighed. "Just 3 more days, and I'll be home. You can do this." "I know, it's just. I feel like I'm fighting them every step of the way." "Are you sure you're not being a little sensitive?" "They're trying to help in their way." I felt a flash of frustration. "Jeff, yesterday my mother tried to put Lily on her stomach to sleep because that's how they did it in the 70s. When I explained about SIDS risks for preemies, she rolled her eyes and said I was being dramatic." "Okay, that's not good," he conceded. "Just hang in there. Focus on Lily, not them." Easy for him to say from 600 miles away. That night, I woke to the sound of Lily's monitor beeping, not the emergency alarm, but the notification that her feeding was due. Half asleep, I padded down the hallway to her nursery, only to find my mother already there, a regular bottle of formula in her hand. "Mom, what are you doing?" I asked, fully awake now. "That's not Lily's formula." "I picked this up yesterday," she said, holding up the container of standard newborn formula. "This special stuff you've been using costs a fortune, and this is perfectly fine." I took the bottle from her hand, my heart racing. She needs the Premature formula. It has extra calories and nutrients specifically formulated for her development. "Formula is formula," my mother insisted. "You're overthinking this." "No, I'm following medical advice," I countered, reaching for the correct formula on the shelf. Her doctor specifically prescribed this. Using regular formula could compromise her growth. My mother threw up her hands. "Fine. Do it your way. You always do." The next morning, I found my father giving Lily water from a dropper. "Dad, what are you doing?" I asked, taking Lily from his arms. "Giving the little one some water. Babies need water, especially in this heat." "No, they don't," I said firmly. "Especially not preemies. It can dilute their electrolytes and cause serious problems. Please don't give her anything without checking with me first." He looked offended. "I raised 2 children, Carol. I think I know a thing or two about babies." The final straw came later that afternoon. I had just put Lily down for her nap and was using the rare moment of quiet to shower. When I emerged, feeling somewhat refreshed, I heard my mother's voice coming from the nursery. "There, that's better, isn't it? All those wires and beeping machines, making a fuss over nothing." I rushed in to find her removing the pulse oximeter from Lily's foot. The monitor screen showed flat lines where Lily's vital signs should have been. "What are you doing?" I nearly shouted, startling both Lily and my mother. "These things were irritating her skin," my mother said defensively. "She doesn't need all this medical equipment now that she's home." "Yes, she does." I reconnected the monitor with shaking hands. "Her lungs aren't fully developed. She needs constant monitoring for the first 3 months, at minimum." "You're being ridiculous, Carol. You're turning into one of those anxious, overprotective mothers. It's not healthy for you or the baby." "I'm following medical advice," I said through clenched teeth. "This isn't about being overprotective. This is about keeping my daughter alive." My mother crossed her arms. "Well, if you ask me, you're creating problems where there aren't any. And if you keep this up, someone might start to wonder if you're fit to care for a special needs child." The threat hung in the air between us. "Are you threatening to call Child Protective Services on me for following medical advice?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "I'm saying that postpartum anxiety is a real thing, and you're showing all the signs." I took a deep breath, counting to 10 in my head. "I think you should leave," I said finally. "All of you, today." "Don't be dramatic," my mother scoffed. "We're here to help." "No, you're here to undermine me and potentially endanger my daughter. I want you gone before dinner." I turned my attention to Lily, effectively ending the conversation. My mother stomped out of the room, no doubt to confer with my father about their ungrateful daughter. An hour later, my father knocked on the nursery door. "Your mother is upset," he said, as if that explained everything. "I'm upset too, Dad. She was removing medical equipment that Lily needs." He sighed heavily. "Look, we're not leaving. You need us, whether you want to admit it or not. Jeff asked us to stay until he gets back, and that's what we're going to do." "Jeff doesn't know what's been happening here," I protested. "Jeff knows you're emotional right now. It's normal after having a baby, especially in your situation." He gestured vaguely toward Lily's monitors. "Let's all just take a step back and try to get along for the next few days, okay?" Before I could respond, Ethan appeared in the doorway. Everything okay in here? Mom's kinda having a meltdown downstairs." "Everything's fine," my father said firmly. "Your sister is just a little overwhelmed with the baby." And just like that, my concerns were dismissed. My father returned downstairs to comfort my mother, and Ethan lingered awkwardly in the hallway. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I think Mom was wrong to mess with the baby's stuff. It was the closest thing to support I'd received from my family in days. And yet, it wasn't enough. Not when Lily's health was at stake." That night, I locked the nursery door. When I went to bed, the baby monitor clutched tightly in my hand. 3 more days until Jeff came home. I just had to keep Lily safe until then. I had no idea that the worst was yet to come. The morning of the incident started like any other during my parents' stay, tense, exhausting, and filled with unsolicited advice. The only difference was the call I received from Jeff. "I've got bad news," he said, his voice crackling over the poor hotel connection. "The regional manager wants me to extend the trip by 3 days. There's a potential client in Denver they want me to meet with." 3 more days? I felt panic rising in my chest. "Jeff, I can't do this for 3 more days. I know it's not ideal, but this client could mean a huge commission. We could use that money for Lily's medical bills." He was right, of course. Despite our insurance, the out-of-pocket expenses for Lily's care were mounting. Still, the thought of 3 more days alone with my parents and Ethan made me want to scream. "Fine," I relented. "But you owe me, big time." "The biggest," he promised. "And hey, maybe your parents will surprise you. Maybe they're starting to understand." They weren't. That afternoon, Ethan burst into the kitchen, where I was carefully measuring out Lily's medication. "Guess what?" he announced, practically vibrating with excitement. "Remember that tech startup I interviewed with last month? They want a second interview. Video call tomorrow morning." "That's great, Ethan," I said, genuinely happy for him despite everything. A job would mean he'd move out of our parents' house, which would be good for everyone. "The only thing is," he continued, "their HR person can only do 9:30 tomorrow morning, and my phone's acting up. The video keeps freezing. Can I use your laptop for the call?" "Sure," I nodded, focusing on the syringe of medication. "It's in our bedroom. Just make sure it's charged." "You're the best, sis." He gave me a quick side hug before bounding up the stairs. In the nursery, Lily was sleeping peacefully in her crib. The gentle whoosh of the humidifier and the soft beeping of her monitors, creating the white noise she'd grown accustomed to in the NICU. I administered her medication through the small feeding tube that supplemented her still, developing sucking reflex, careful not to disturb her rest. As I was finishing up, my phone buzzed with a text from the pharmacy. Lily's specialized formula was ready for pickup. I'd need to go get it soon. We were down to our last can. "Mom?" I called softly as I descended the stairs. "Can you listen for Lily while I run to the pharmacy? Her monitor will alarm if anything changes, and she should sleep for at least another hour." My mother looked up from her magazine. "Of course. Though I don't see why you can't just use the formula I bought." I ignored the comment. "I'll be back in 20 minutes. If she wakes up, just let her be until I get back. She doesn't need to eat until 11:30. Go, my mother shooed me away. "We'll be fine." I grabbed my purse and car keys, taking one last glance at the baby monitor screen, showing Lily's peaceful sleep before heading out the door. The pharmacy was busier than usual, and what should have been a quick trip stretched to 30 minutes as they located Lily's special order. By the time I pulled back into our driveway, my anxiety was spiking. I rushed inside, the formula tucked under my arm. That's when I heard it, the high-pitched, urgent beeping of Lily's oxygen monitor alarm. I dropped everything and ran up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. The alarm was designed to be impossible to ignore. Its insistent screeching meant to alert us to potentially life-threatening changes in Lily's condition. When I burst into the nursery, the scene before me stopped me cold. My mother stood over Lily's crib, her face a mask of irritation. The oxygen monitor was unplugged from the wall, its cord dangling uselessly, while my brother's phone charger occupied the outlet instead. Lily was awake and crying, her tiny face redder than usual. "What are you doing?" I demanded, pushing past my mother to reconnect the monitor. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Carol, don't overreact," my mother said dismissively. Ethan needed to charge his phone for his interview. The cord wouldn't reach from the other outlet. "So you unplugged her oxygen monitor?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "This isn't a TV or a lamp, Mom. This monitors her breathing." "She's breathing just fine," my mother insisted, gesturing to the crying baby. "Listen to those lungs. There's nothing wrong with her." My father appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. What's all this shouting about? She unplugged Lily's oxygen monitor to charge Ethan's phone, I explained, my voice shaking with fury and fear. He has an important call, my mother defended. And all these machines are just making you paranoid. The baby is fine. She is not fine. I checked the monitor readings as they came back online. Lily's oxygen saturation was at 88%, lower than her baseline of 94. Not immediately dangerous, but concerning enough that her pediatrician would want to know. Stop overreacting, my father chimed in. Babies are tough. We didn't have all these gadgets when you were little. I wasn't born 12 weeks premature, I shouted, picking Lily up to comfort her. Her lungs aren't fully developed. She needs this monitoring equipment. The doctor ordered it. It's not optional. Ethan appeared behind my father, his expression concerned. What's going on? Why is everyone yelling? Your mother unplugged the baby's oxygen monitor so you could charge your phone, I said flatly. I didn't know, Ethan stammered. Is the baby okay? Her name is Lily, I snapped. And I don't know yet. As I held her, I noticed something that turned my blood to ice. Lily's lips had a faint bluish tint, and her breathing seemed more labored than usual. While we'd been arguing, her condition had deteriorated. Something's wrong, I said, my anger immediately replaced by terror. She's not getting enough oxygen. I laid her gently back in the crib and turned up her supplemental oxygen, watching the monitor numbers anxiously. Instead of improving, her oxygen level dropped to 85%. I'm calling 911, I announced, already reaching for my phone. Don't be ridiculous, my mother scoffed. You're overreacting again. But I was already dialing, and as I spoke to the dispatcher, Lily's color worsened. She stopped crying, her energy seemingly spent on the simple act of breathing. By the time I hung up, promising the ambulance was on its way, Lily had gone limp in my arms, her tiny chest heaving with the effort to draw breath. Get out, I said to my parents, my voice deadly calm. Get out of this room right now. For once, they didn't argue. Perhaps they finally realized the seriousness of the situation, or maybe they were just startled by my tone. Either way, they retreated to the hallway, leaving me alone with my struggling daughter. Hold on, Lily, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Help is coming. Just hold on. The 7 minutes it took for the ambulance to arrive felt like 7 years. I counted each of Lily's breaths, willing her to keep fighting. When the paramedics finally rushed in, I could barely speak through my tears, but I managed to give them the essential information: her birth weight, her gestational age at birth, her medical history. As they worked to stabilize her, placing a tiny oxygen mask over her face and attaching their own monitoring equipment, one of them asked, "How long was her monitor disconnected?" "I don't know," I admitted. "At least 15 minutes. Maybe longer." He exchanged a glance with his partner that sent fresh fear coursing through me. "We need to transport her now," he said. "You can ride with us, or follow in your car." "I'll ride with you," I said immediately, not even considering leaving her side. As they carried her to the ambulance, my parents and Ethan stood in the living room, watching in shocked silence. My father made a move as if to follow, but I stopped him with a look. "Don't," I said, my voice breaking. "Don't you dare." In the ambulance, as the paramedics continued to work on Lily, one of them asked gently, "Do you know what caused her oxygen levels to drop?" My mother unplugged her monitor to charge my brother's phone, I said, the words tasting like poison in my mouth. She didn't think it was important. He didn't respond, but his expression said everything. As we raced toward the hospital, Lily's tiny hand wrapped around my finger. I made a silent promise to her. This would never happen again. I would protect her, no matter the cost. No matter who I had to cut out of our lives. My parents had no idea what was coming next. The pediatric emergency room was a flurry of activity as doctors and nurses swarmed around Lily. I stood against the wall, trying to stay out of their way while remaining close enough to hear what they were saying. Words like respiratory distress and possible hypoxic event floated above the beeping monitors and urgent voices. A kind-faced nurse guided me to a chair. "Mom, I need you to take a seat right here. Dr. Chen is the best pediatric pulmonologist in the hospital, And she's with your daughter now." I nodded numbly, my eyes never leaving the tiny form surrounded by medical staff. "Can you tell me what happened?" the nurse asked, clipboard in hand. I recounted the events in a monotone, feeling detached from my own voice. When I reached the part about my mother unplugging the monitor, the nurse's pen paused on the paper. "And how long was the monitor disconnected?" "I'm not sure. I was at the pharmacy for about 30 minutes. It could have been the entire time." She made a note and squeezed my hand. "Dr. Chen will want to speak with you once Lily is stabilized." An hour later, Dr. Chen approached me in the waiting area where I'd been moved. She was a petite woman, with kind eyes behind stylish glasses. "Mrs. Sullivan? I'm Dr. Chen. Lily is stable now." The relief that flooded through me was so intense I nearly collapsed. "Can I see her?" "In a moment," she promised. "First, I'd like to discuss what happened and our plan moving forward." We sat in a quiet consultation room, and Dr. Chen explained that Lily had experienced a significant oxygen desaturation event that, thankfully, they'd caught in time before permanent damage occurred. "However," she continued, "we are concerned about sending her home if there's any question about the monitoring equipment being used properly." "It wasn't a misuse issue," I said defensively. "My mother unplugged her monitor without permission. I would never." "I understand," Dr. Chen held up a hand. "But we need to be sure that Lily's home environment is safe for her continued recovery." A knock at the door interrupted us. A woman in business casual attire entered, introducing herself as Melissa Garcia from Hospital Social Services. My stomach dropped. "Social services? Why do we need social services?" "Standard procedure in cases like this," Melissa explained. "When a medically fragile infant is readmitted with an incident that could have been prevented, we need to assess the home situation." "I didn't do anything wrong," I insisted, tears pricking at my eyes. "It was my mother. I had the monitors set up exactly as the NICU team showed me." "No one is accusing you of anything," Dr. Chen assured me. "But we do need to understand what happened and make sure it doesn't happen again." The interview that followed was excruciating. Every aspect of Lily's care routine, our home setup, and the dynamics with my visiting family was dissected and documented. I felt like I was on trial for something I didn't do. "And where was your husband during all this?" Melissa asked. "On a business trip. He's a pharmaceutical sales rep. He's been gone for 5 days, and he's supposed to come home tomorrow." "So your parents were there to help while he was away?" "Yes, but they weren't helping. They were undermining me at every turn. My mother gave Lily regular formula instead of her prescribed preemie formula. My father gave her water, which the doctors specifically said not to do. And then they unplugged her monitor to charge a phone." Melissa made notes in her file. "Would you say there's tension between you and your parents?" "There's always been tension," I admitted. "But this isn't about family drama. This is about them ignoring medical advice and putting my daughter at risk." The conversation was interrupted by a nurse informing us that Lily was settled in the NICU and ready for me to visit. I followed her through the familiar corridors, the antiseptic smell, bringing back the anxiety of Lily's first stay. Seeing her back in an incubator, attached to even more tubes and wires than before, broke something inside me. I pressed my hand against the clear plastic wall separating us, wishing I could hold her. "We're just taking precautions," the NICU nurse assured me. "Her oxygen levels are much better now, but Dr. Chen wants to monitor her overnight." "When can she come home?" The nurse hesitated. "That's up to Dr. Chen and the social worker. They'll need to determine if her home environment is safe." The implication that my home might be deemed unsafe for my daughter was like a physical blow. I spent the next hours by Lily's side, only leaving the NICU when my phone battery died, and I needed to find a charger. In the family waiting room, I found my parents and Ethan. My mother rushed toward me, her face streaked with tears. "How is she? How's our little girl?" "Our little girl." As if she had any claim to Lily after what she'd done. "She's stable," I said coldly. "No thanks to you." "Now, Carol," my father started, his tone conciliatory. "Your mother feels terrible about what happened." "Not terrible enough to admit what she did to the doctors," I shot back. "The social worker told me you claimed I disconnected the monitor myself." My mother's face flushed. "I never said that. I just told them you might have forgotten to plug it back in after moving her. You've been so forgetful lately, with all the stress. Are you kidding me? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're trying to blame this on me? You unplugged her monitor to charge Ethan's phone. You said, and I quote, "He has an important call." I didn't think it would hurt her, my mother defended. How was I supposed to know which plug was which? They're labeled, I nearly shouted. And I've explained the equipment to you multiple times. Carol, please lower your voice, my father said, glancing around the waiting room. People are staring. I don't care who's staring. My daughter is back in the NICU because of you, and instead of taking responsibility, you're trying to make me look incompetent to the hospital staff. Ethan stepped between us. Hey, let's all calm down. The important thing is that Lily's okay, right? She's not okay, I hissed. She had a hypoxic event that could have caused brain damage. She stopped breathing, Ethan. Do you understand that? She stopped breathing because Mom unplugged her monitor to charge your phone. Ethan blanched. I didn't know. And now, I continued, unable to stop the flood of words, the hospital is questioning whether I can take her home because they think our house isn't safe for her. They might extend her hospital stay. They might even. I couldn't finish the thought, the possibility too horrifying to voice. No one's going to take Lily away, my father said firmly. We're family. We'll sort this out. Family doesn't endanger a baby's life, and then lie about it, I countered. The tension was interrupted by Jeff's arrival. He rushed into the waiting room, still carrying his travel bag, his face pale with worry. I got on the first flight back when you called, he said, pulling me into his arms. How's Lily? What happened? Before I could answer, my mother interjected. There was a little incident with the baby's monitor. But she's fine now, just being kept for observation. Jeff looked between us, sensing the tension. What kind of incident? My mother unplugged Lily's oxygen monitor to charge Ethan's phone, I stated flatly. Her oxygen levels dropped dangerously low. She turned blue, Jeff. She stopped breathing for a moment. Jeff's expression hardened as he turned to my mother. You did what? It wasn't like that, my mother insisted. Carol's exaggerating. The baby was fussy, that's all. She wasn't fussy, she was oxygen, deprived. I couldn't control the volume of my voice anymore. And now, instead of admitting what happened, you're telling the hospital staff that I'm unstable and negligent. No one said you're unstable, my father interjected. We just think you might be suffering from postpartum anxiety. It's very common. And with Lily's condition... Stop it, Jeff said, his normally easygoing demeanor replaced by cold anger. Just stop. Our daughter is in the NICU because someone unplugged vital medical equipment. That's not anxiety, that's reality. I felt a rush of gratitude for his support, though part of me wished he'd believed me sooner, when I told him over the phone how badly things were going. A hospital security officer approached our group. Folks, I'm going to have to ask you to take this discussion elsewhere. This is a quiet zone for families with children in care. We're sorry, Jeff apologized. We'll leave. As we walked toward the elevators, my mother caught my arm. Carol, please, don't shut us out. We want to help. You've helped enough, I said, pulling away from her touch. I think it's best if you all go to a hotel tonight. But my father began. It's not a suggestion, Jeff cut in, his arm firmly around my shoulders. We'll call you tomorrow once we know more about Lily's condition. The elevator doors closed on my parents' stunned faces. In the car, Jeff held me as I finally broke down completely, sobs racking my body. I should never have left, he murmured into my hair. I'm so sorry, Carol. It's not your fault, I managed between tears. You couldn't have known they'd do something like this. I knew they were difficult. But this... He shook his head in disbelief. What are we going to do now? I don't know, I admitted. The social worker is involved. They're questioning whether our home is safe for Lily. Jeff's face paled further. They can't possibly think we're unfit parents because of what your mother did. They might. And my parents aren't helping. They told the hospital I've been acting erratically, that I'm suffering from severe postpartum anxiety. That's ridiculous. Is it? I looked at him searchingly. You thought I was exaggerating too, remember? When I called to tell you how bad things were getting? He had the grace to look ashamed. You're right. I should have listened better. I should have come home sooner. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation settling between us. We'll get through this, Jeff promised, squeezing my hand. Together? I nodded, wanting desperately to believe him. But as we drove home to collect some overnight things, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of our battle. A battle not just for Lily's health, but for our right to be her parents without interference. And the most painful part was realizing that the people we were fighting against were supposed to be on our side. I had no idea then just how ugly things would get before they got better. The next morning, Dr. Chen delivered cautiously optimistic news. Lily's oxygen levels had stabilized overnight, and her breathing was less labored. If she continued to improve, we might be able to take her home in 24 to 48 hours. However, she added, we need to be certain that the home environment is appropriate for her continued care. It is, I insisted. What happened was an isolated incident caused by my mother, who is no longer staying with us. Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. Miss Garcia from Social Services will need to follow up with you about that. She's arranging a home visit for tomorrow morning. Jeff squeezed my hand reassuringly. We'll be ready. Our home is set up exactly as the NICU team recommended. We spent the morning with Lily, taking turns holding her now that she was stable enough to be out of the incubator for short periods. Despite the circumstances, these quiet moments were precious. Her tiny weight against my chest, her delicate fingers wrapped around Jeff's thumb. For a few hours, we could almost forget the storm surrounding us. That illusion shattered when we entered the family waiting room to find my parents and Ethan in heated conversation with Melissa Garcia from Hospital Social Services. What's going on? I asked, immediately on guard. Melissa turned to us with a professional smile. Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan, I was just speaking with your family about Lily's care plan. Without us? Jeff questioned. We're her parents. Of course, and we were going to bring you into the conversation, she assured us. Your parents have some concerns they wanted to share about the home environment. A cold dread settled in my stomach. What concerns? My mother stepped forward, her expression a perfect mask of grandmotherly concern. Sweetheart, we're worried about you. The way you've been acting since Lily was born, the paranoia about the monitors, the rigid scheduling, how you snap at everyone who tries to help. That's not paranoia. That's following medical advice, I protested. And I only snap when someone ignores that advice and puts my daughter at risk. See how defensive she gets? My mother said to Melissa. This isn't like our Carol. We think she's suffering from severe postpartum depression or anxiety. She needs help. I'm defensive because you're trying to make me sound unstable. I could feel my control slipping. You unplugged my daughter's oxygen monitor, and now you're trying to paint me as the problem? Jeff placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. Miss Garcia, my in-laws mean well, but they fundamentally misunderstand the level of care Lily requires. What they see as paranoia is actually just careful adherence to the medical protocol we were given. Mr. Sullivan, my father interjected, we raised 2 children successfully. We know when someone is taking normal parental concern to an unhealthy extreme. Dad, Lily isn't a normal, healthy newborn, I said, struggling to keep my voice even. She was born at 28 weeks. Her lungs aren't fully developed. Her immune system is compromised. The extreme measures are what's keeping her alive. Melissa observed our exchange with a neutral expression. It's clear there's a significant disconnect here about Lily's needs. Mrs. Sullivan, do you have documentation of the care protocols you were given by the NICU team? Yes, everything's at home. I have a binder with all her discharge instructions, medication schedules, emergency protocols, everything. I'd like to see that during our home visit tomorrow. My mother's eyes widened. You're still going to let them take her home after what happened? Mom! I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Do you actually want them to keep our daughter in the hospital? Of course not, she backpedaled. We just want to make sure she's safe. Safe from what? From me? Her mother? My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. You're the one who endangered her life, not me. Ethan, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. Mom, Dad, maybe we should back off a little. Carol and Jeff are Lily's parents. My mother rounded on him. Don't you start too. This isn't about undermining their parenting. This is about making sure Carol gets the help she needs. I don't need help, I shouted, finally losing the battle with my temper. I need you to stop trying to control everything. This isn't about Lily or my mental health. It's about you not being able to stand that I'm not doing things your way. The waiting room fell silent, other families staring at our family drama playing out in public. Melissa cleared her throat uncomfortably. Perhaps we should continue this discussion in a more private setting, she suggested. There's a conference room available. We followed her to a small room off the main corridor, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Once the door closed behind us, my father spoke. Carol, we're not trying to take Lily away from you. We're trying to help. By telling a social worker I'm mentally unstable? How is that helping? We didn't say unstable, my mother corrected. We said you might be suffering from postpartum anxiety, which is treatable. And did you also tell her that you unplugged Lily's monitor? I challenged. Or did you conveniently leave that part out? My mother's silence was answer enough. Jeff, who had been maintaining his composure better than I was, finally spoke. I think we all need to take a step back here. Martha, Harold, I know you care about Lily and Carol, but what you're doing right now isn't helping. It's creating more stress in an already stressful situation. We're creating stress? My father scoffed. Carol's the one who called an ambulance for what was probably just a brief dip in oxygen that would have corrected itself. The casual dismissal of Lily's life, threatening episode, was the final straw. Something inside me snapped. Get out, I said, my voice deadly quiet. Get out of this room. Get out of this hospital, and get out of our lives. Carol! My mother looked shocked. No, I mean it. You've done nothing but undermine me since the day Lily was born. You ignored medical advice, endangered her life, and now you're trying to convince hospital staff that I'm mentally unfit to care for my own daughter. What kind of grandparents do that? The kind who are worried about their grandchild. My father shot back. If you can't see that your behavior is concerning, then maybe you do need professional help. Jeff stepped between us. That's enough, Harold. I think it's best if you all leave now, as Carol asked. And what about you? My mother turned to Jeff. Do you think your wife is acting rationally? Are you not concerned at all about her state of mind? What I'm concerned about, Jeff said firmly, is that my daughter ended up back in the hospital because someone unplugged her monitoring equipment. And instead of taking responsibility for that, you're trying to deflect blame onto Carol. We're not deflecting anything, my father insisted. We're trying to look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that you need to leave, I repeated. Now, Melissa, who had been silently observing our exchange, finally intervened. I think emotions are running too high for this to be productive. Perhaps it would be best if we reconvene tomorrow during the home visit, when everyone has had a chance to calm down. Fine, my father agreed stiffly. But this isn't over, Carol. As they filed out of the room, Ethan lingered behind. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I didn't know my phone charger would cause all this. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to say it wasn't his fault. But another part, the protective mother part, couldn't offer that absolution yet. You didn't unplug her monitor, I acknowledged. But you've been treating our home like a hotel since you arrived, with no consideration for the fact that we have a medically fragile infant. So while this specific incident might not be directly your fault, you're not exactly innocent either. He nodded, accepting the rebuke. I'll try to talk to Mom and Dad, make them see reason. Good luck with that, I said tiredly. They've never listened to me. I doubt they'll start with you. After they left, Melissa turned to Jeff and me. I want to be very clear about something. No one is suggesting Lily be removed from your care. Our goal is always to keep families together whenever possible. I just need to ensure that her home environment is safe and stable. It is, Jeff assured her. What happened was an anomaly caused by a visitor who is no longer welcome in our home. She made a note in her file. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 for the home visit. Please have Lily's medical documentation ready. Once she left, I collapsed into a chair, emotionally spent. Did that really just happen? I asked Jeff. Did my parents really try to convince a social worker that I'm an unfit mother? Jeff knelt in front of me, taking my hands in his. They're wrong, Carol. You are an amazing mother. Anyone who spends 5 minutes watching you with Lily can see that. Then why can't they? My voice broke. Why are they doing this? I don't know, he admitted. But what I do know is that we're going to get through this. Together. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. But as we returned to Lily's bedside, I couldn't shake the feeling that my parents weren't going to let this go so easily. And I was right. Later that evening, as Jeff went to get us dinner from the cafeteria, my phone buzzed with a text from a family friend. Just heard what happened with Lily. So sorry you're going through this. Your mom called me in tears about how worried they are about you. Let me know if there's anything I can do. Then another text, from my cousin. Hey, your dad called. Said you're having a really rough time with the baby. Do you need anything? And another, from my aunt. Martha told me about the baby's hospitalization. She's so worried about you, sweetie. Are you getting help for the postpartum? They were calling everyone. Spreading their version of events through our entire extended family and social circle. Painting me as unstable, unable to cope, potentially dangerous to my own child. When Jeff returned, I showed him the messages, my hands shaking with fury and betrayal. They're trying to build a case against me, I realized. They're gathering allies. Jeff's expression hardened. Then we need to build a stronger one. For Lily. And in that moment, I knew we weren't just fighting for our daughter's health anymore. We were fighting for our family's very existence. And it was a fight I was determined to win. The home visit the next morning went better than expected. Melissa Garcia seemed impressed by the detailed documentation I had kept since Lily's birth, the binder of medical instructions, the logs of her feedings, medications, and oxygen levels, the proper setup of her monitoring equipment. You're clearly well, prepared, and knowledgeable about Lily's needs, she acknowledged, as she reviewed the nursery setup. We've tried to follow every recommendation from the NICU team, Jeff explained. Carol has been meticulous about it. Melissa made a few notes in her file. And your parents won't be staying here anymore? No, I said firmly. They're not welcome after what happened. She nodded thoughtfully. I understand family dynamics can be complicated, especially with a new baby. Have there been issues with your parents before Lily was born? I hesitated, not wanting to air family laundry but knowing honesty was crucial. There's always been tension. They've always favored my brother. But nothing like this. Nothing that put anyone in danger. And do you have other support systems in place? Friends, other family members, parent groups? We have friends who've been helpful, Jeff answered. And my parents live about 3 hours away. They've offered to come stay with us when I have to travel for work. That's good, Melissa made another note. Strong support networks are important, especially with a medically fragile child. After she left, promising to file her report recommending Lily's release to our care the following day, Jeff and I breathed a collective sigh of relief. One hurdle down, he said, pulling me into a hug. But probably not the last, I cautioned. My parents aren't going to just let this go. I was right. That afternoon, while Jeff was at the hospital with Lily, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Sullivan? This is Richard Davenport. I'm an attorney representing your parents, Martha and Harold Parker. My blood ran cold. An attorney? Why are my parents contacting me through an attorney? They're concerned about their granddaughter's welfare and their access to her, he explained in a polished voice. They feel they've been unfairly blamed for an unfortunate incident, and they're worried about being cut off from their grandchild. Their actions put my daughter back in the hospital, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. They're lucky I haven't pressed charges for negligence. My clients have a different perspective on what transpired, he countered smoothly. They believe you're suffering from severe postpartum anxiety that's affecting your judgment and potentially creating an unstable environment for your daughter. That's absurd, I sputtered. And completely untrue. Nevertheless, they're prepared to petition for grandparents' rights if necessary, including supervised visitation and potentially shared custody, if they can demonstrate that you're unable to provide a safe environment. The room seemed to tilt around me. They want custody of my child? After what they did? They want what's best for their granddaughter, he corrected. And they're concerned that your emotional state is preventing you from making rational decisions. My emotional state is that of a mother whose child was endangered by negligent grandparents, I fired back. And I suggest you inform your clients that if they pursue this, I will fight them with everything I have. After hanging up, I immediately called Jeff, my hand shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. They've hired a lawyer, I told him, my voice breaking. They're threatening to sue for grandparents' rights. They want custody, Jeff. His sharp intake of breath was followed by a stream of words I'd never heard from my normally mild-mannered husband. I'm coming home right now. We need to find an attorney. By that evening, we had secured an emergency consultation with Laura Mendez, a family law attorney recommended by one of Jeff's colleagues. She listened intently as we explained the situation, her expression growing increasingly concerned. Unfortunately, grandparents' rights cases are becoming more common, she explained. But the good news is that courts generally favor parental rights, unless there's clear evidence of abuse or neglect. Which there isn't, Jeff insisted. Based on what you've told me, absolutely not, Laura agreed. However, your parents are clearly trying to build a narrative that Carol is mentally unstable and potentially unfit. We need to counter that narrative proactively. She outlined a strategy: document everything, install security cameras around the house, gather statements from Lily's medical providers attesting to our competence as parents, and prepare for the possibility of a court battle. In the meantime, she advised, cut all direct communication with your parents. Everything should go through me. And be very careful what you say to mutual friends and family members. Anything you say could be twisted and used against you. As we drove home, the weight of what we were facing settled over me. I can't believe it's come to this, I said quietly. These are my parents, Jeff, the people who raised me. He reached across the console to squeeze my hand. I know. And I'm so sorry you have to go through this. But we'll get through it together. The next day, Lily was discharged with a clean bill of health and strict follow-up appointments scheduled. Bringing her home again should have been purely joyful, but the shadow of my parents' threats loomed large. We implemented Laura's suggestions immediately. Jeff installed security cameras covering every entrance to our house, as well as one in Lily's nursery. I meticulously documented every aspect of Lily's care, saving copies of medical reports and keeping detailed logs of her progress. Dr. Chen and the NICU team provided statements about our competence as parents and the appropriateness of our home care setup. Melissa Garcia's report concluded that our home was safe and suitable for Lily's needs, with the provision that her monitoring equipment remain properly connected at all times, a condition we had no problem accepting. A week after Lily's return home, I received a text from Ethan. Can we talk? Alone? After consulting with Laura, who advised caution but said a meeting in a public place would be acceptable, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop near our house. Jeff stayed home with Lily, watching the meeting through my phone's video call app as an added precaution. Ethan looked tired when he slid into the booth across from me, dark circles under his eyes. How's Lily? He asked immediately. She's doing well, I said cautiously. Back to her baseline. The doctors don't think there will be any lasting effects from what happened. He nodded, relief evident on his face. Good, that's good. A tense silence fell between us. So, what did you want to talk about? I finally prompted. Ethan sighed heavily. Mom and Dad are out of control. They're convinced you're having some kind of breakdown. They've been calling everyone we know, telling them you need an intervention. I'm aware, I said dryly. They've hired a lawyer to try to get custody of Lily. His eyes widened. Custody? Are you serious? I knew they were talking about grandparents' rights, but I thought that just meant visitation. Apparently not. I studied his face. Did they send you here to gather information for their case? No. He looked genuinely shocked. God, no, Carol. I came because I think they're wrong, and I wanted you to know that. I wasn't sure whether to believe him. You've always taken their side before. I know. He had the grace to look ashamed. And I've been thinking a lot about why that is. About how they've always treated us differently. How they've always made excuses for me while holding you to impossible standards. It was the first time he'd ever acknowledged the disparity in our parents' treatment. I felt a knot in my throat. They're wrong about you, he continued. I've seen how you are with Lily. You're a good mom, Carol. And what happened? I should have spoken up sooner. I knew that Monitor was important. I just didn't want to rock the boat. Why are you telling me this now? He looked down at his coffee cup. Because they're trying to rope me into their lawsuit. They want me to testify that you've been acting irrationally, that I've been concerned about your behavior. And will you? I held my breath, waiting for his answer. No, he said firmly. I won't lie for them. Not about this. Not when it could hurt Lily. Relief flooded through me, followed quickly by suspicion. They'll cut you off if you side with me. No more free rent, no more financial support. I know. He smiled wryly. That's why I took that job I interviewed for. The one that started this whole mess. I start next week. Ethan, that's great. Despite everything, I was genuinely happy for him. Where? Tech company in Portland. It's entry, level IT support, nothing glamorous, but it's a foot in the door. And more importantly, it's 600 miles away from Mom and Dad. I studied my brother's face, seeing real maturity there for perhaps the first time. They're not going to take this well. No, they're not, he agreed. But it's time I stood on my own 2 feet. And it's time I stood up for what's right, even if it means standing against them. As we parted, he hesitated, then pulled me into an awkward hug. I'm sorry, Carol, for everything. I want to be a better brother to you, a better uncle to Lily. I'd like that, I said, surprised to find I meant it. That evening, as I shared the conversation with Jeff, we allowed ourselves a cautious optimism. Having Ethan on our side could potentially weaken my parents' case significantly. But our hope was short-lived. The next day, Laura called with disturbing news. We've received a copy of your parents' petition, she said grimly. And it's worse than I anticipated. They're not just seeking grandparents' rights. They're alleging that you're suffering from delusional disorder and that you're a danger to Lily. What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How can they possibly claim that? They've collected statements from family friends, claiming you've been acting erratically. They're also citing the incident with the monitor, but in their version, you disconnected it yourself in a fit of paranoia, then blamed your mother when emergency services arrived. That's a complete lie. I was shaking with fury. There are hospital records, the paramedics report. I know, Laura interrupted soothingly. And we'll present all that evidence. But I need to prepare you. They're also requesting an emergency hearing to determine temporary custody while the case proceeds. They're claiming Lily is in immediate danger in your care. The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. When is the hearing? Next week. And Carol? There's something else you should know. They've been investigating your background. They found your old therapy records from college. I closed my eyes, a cold dread settling in my stomach, the panic attacks. Yes. They're using your history of anxiety to bolster their claim that you're mentally unstable. After I hung up, I sat in stunned silence, trying to process the depths to which my parents were willing to sink. They were not just trying to gain access to Lily, they were trying to destroy me in the process. That night, as Jeff and I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by legal documents and medical records, the full magnitude of what we were facing hit me. What if they win? I whispered, voicing my deepest fear. What if they convince a judge that I'm unfit? Jeff took my hands firmly in his. They won't. We have truth on our side, Carol. We have evidence. We have doctors and social workers who will testify to your competence as a mother. But they have decades of being the respectable, stable grandparents, I countered. And they've been spreading their version of events through our entire social circle. Then we need to spread ours, Jeff said, determination hardening his features. And we need to make sure everyone knows exactly what they did and what they're trying to do now. As we formulated our plan, I felt a steely resolve replacing my fear and hurt. My parents had declared war on my family, on my ability to mother my own child, and I was done being their victim. They thought they knew what I was capable of. They had no idea what was coming next. The courthouse was imposing, all marble columns and echoing hallways. I clutched Jeff's hand as we followed Laura through the security checkpoint, my stomach in knots. Lily was with Jeff's parents, who had driven in the night before to support us. Their unwavering belief in us as parents had been a lifeline during the past week of preparation. "Remember what we discussed," Laura murmured as we approached the courtroom. "Stay calm, answer only what's asked, and let me handle any objections. The judge needs to see you as the rational, loving mother you are." Inside, my parents sat at the opposite table with their attorney. My mother caught my eye and had the audacity to give me a sad, concerned look, as if she were the wounded party in all this. My father stared straight ahead, his jaw set in the stubborn expression I knew all too well. To my surprise, Ethan sat in the gallery behind us, not with my parents. When I glanced back questioningly, he gave me a small, encouraging nod. Judge Harriet Wilson, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, called the court to order. "This is an emergency hearing regarding the petition filed by Martha and Harold Parker seeking temporary custody of their granddaughter, Lily Sullivan, on the grounds that the child's mother, Carol Sullivan, presents an immediate danger to the child's well-being. Mr. Davenport, you may present your case." Richard Davenport rose smoothly. "Your Honor, my clients are deeply concerned about their granddaughter's safety. Their daughter has exhibited increasingly erratic behavior since the birth of her child, culminating in a dangerous incident where the infant's oxygen monitoring equipment was disconnected, necessitating emergency hospitalization." He went on to paint me as unstable, paranoid, and potentially suffering from postpartum psychosis. He presented affidavits from family, friends, people I'd known for years, claiming I'd been not myself, and obsessively concerned about Lily's health beyond what was reasonable. Furthermore, he concluded, Mrs. Sullivan has a documented history of anxiety disorder dating back to her college years. While she has apparently managed this condition in the past, the stress of caring for a medically fragile infant has clearly exacerbated her condition to a dangerous degree. I gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white, as he twisted my past struggles into weapons against me. Laura squeezed my arm reassuringly before rising to present our side. "Your Honor, what we have here is not a mother suffering from delusions, but grandparents who refuse to follow critical medical protocols for a premature infant with underdeveloped lungs," she began. "The monitoring equipment that was disconnected was not disconnected by Mrs. Sullivan, but by Mrs. Parker, who unplugged it to charge her son's phone." She presented the hospital records, the paramedics' report that documented my explanation at the scene, and statements from Dr. Chen and the NICU staff attesting to my appropriate and attentive care of Lily. "Furthermore," Laura continued, "we have the report from Hospital Social Services, which concluded that the Sullivans' home was entirely appropriate for Lily's care, with the only recommendation being that her monitoring equipment remain properly connected, a recommendation my clients have scrupulously followed." The judge listened intently, occasionally making notes. When both attorneys had presented their initial arguments, she spoke. "I'd like to hear from Mrs. Sullivan directly," she said, looking at me over her reading glasses. "Mrs. Sullivan, please take the stand." Heart pounding, I was sworn in. Judge Wilson looked at me contemplatively. "Mrs. Sullivan, can you describe in your own words what happened on the day your daughter was hospitalized?" I took a deep breath and recounted the events exactly as they had occurred. My trip to the pharmacy, returning to find the alarm sounding, discovering my mother had unplugged Lily's monitor to charge my brother's phone, and the terrifying moments when Lily stopped breathing. "And why do you believe your parents have filed this petition?" the judge asked. I considered my answer carefully. "Your Honor, my relationship with my parents has always been strained. They've always favored my brother and been critical of my choices. When I established boundaries after the incident with Lily's monitor, rather than accepting responsibility for what happened, they chose to attack my mental health and my ability to parent. I believe this petition is about control, not concern for Lily's welfare." Richard Davenport Cross examined me aggressively, trying to provoke an emotional response that would support their claims of instability. With Laura's coaching fresh in my mind, I remained calm and factual, even when he brought up my college therapy sessions. Yes, I experienced anxiety and panic attacks in college, I acknowledged. I sought help, learned coping strategies, and have managed my mental health successfully for years. Being concerned about my premature daughter's medical needs is not anxiety, it's responsible parenting. When I returned to our table, Jeff squeezed my hand proudly. The next surprise came when Laura called Ethan to testify. My brother walked to the stand, visibly nervous but determined. "Mr. Parker, you were present during the incident with your niece's monitoring equipment, correct?" Laura asked. "Yes, I was in the house," Ethan confirmed. "And in your observation, who disconnected the monitoring equipment?" Ethan took a deep breath, not looking at our parents. "My mother did. She unplugged it to charge my phone because I had a job interview. I knew it was important equipment, but I didn't speak up. That's on me." A murmur ran through the courtroom. My mother's face had gone pale. "And how would you characterize your sister's care of her daughter?" Laura continued. "Carol is an amazing mother," Ethan said firmly. "She's always been the responsible one in our family. She's meticulous about Lily's care, knowledgeable about her medical needs, and completely devoted to her. The way my parents have portrayed her in this petition is not only wrong, it's cruel." By the time Melissa Garcia testified about her home visit and Dr. Chen presented her assessment of my parenting, a clear picture had emerged that was very different from the one my parents had tried to paint. Judge Wilson called a brief recess before making her ruling. In the hallway, Laura was cautiously optimistic. "It's going well," she assured us. Ethan's testimony was particularly impactful. When we returned to the courtroom, Judge Wilson wasted no time. "Having reviewed the evidence and testimony presented, I find no credible basis for the emergency custody petition filed by Mr. and Mrs. Parker," she declared. "In fact, I find the petition itself troubling in several respects." She looked directly at my parents. "The documentation clearly indicates that it was Mrs. Parker, not Mrs. Sullivan, who disconnected vital medical equipment, endangering the child. The subsequent attempt to shift blame onto Mrs. Sullivan and question her mental stability appears to be a concerning reaction to legitimate boundary setting by the child's parents." My mother made a small, indignant sound, quickly silenced by their attorney. "The petition for emergency custody is denied," Judge Wilson continued. "Furthermore, I am dismissing the grandparents' rights petition in its entirety. The court finds no compelling state interest in overriding the parents' wishes regarding contact with grandparents, particularly given the grandparents' demonstrated disregard for medical protocols essential to the child's health." She looked at me directly. "Mrs. Sullivan, the court finds you to be a fit and appropriate parent who has acted in your child's best interest throughout these proceedings. You and your husband are free to determine what relationship, if any, your child will have with her grandparents going forward." Relief flooded through me so powerfully I nearly collapsed. Jeff's arm around my shoulders was the only thing keeping me upright. "Additionally," the judge added, "I am issuing a temporary restraining order prohibiting Mr. and Mrs. Parker from coming within 100 yards of the Sullivan family or their residence for a period of 6 months, during which time I strongly recommend family counseling if any relationship is to be salvaged." As we left the courthouse, my parents didn't look at us. Their attorney was already speaking to them in hushed tones about possible appeals, but the fight had gone out of them. They had exposed their true selves in public, and the result had not been what they expected. Ethan caught up with us at the car. "Is it okay if I come see Lily before I leave for Portland?" he asked tentatively. "I understand if you're not comfortable with that." I looked at my brother, really looked at him, and saw someone trying to break free from the dysfunctional patterns of our family. Someone trying to do better. "I'd like that," I said, surprising myself, "and I think Lily would too." 6 months later, our lives had transformed in ways I never could have anticipated that terrible day when my mother unplugged Lily's monitor. Lily thrived, despite the early setback, reaching her developmental milestones and growing stronger each day. Her lungs would always bear the mark of her premature birth, but her pediatrician was optimistic about her long-term prognosis. Jeff had negotiated a new arrangement with his company that allowed him to work remotely 3 weeks out of every month, traveling only when absolutely necessary. The change meant a slight reduction in his income, but the time with his family was worth far more. As for my parents, they had made one attempt to appeal the judge's ruling, but their attorney eventually counseled them to drop the case. They sent a formal letter of apology through their lawyer, not a heartfelt reconciliation, but at least an acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Perhaps someday there would be more, but for now, the distance was healing. Ethan had flourished in his new job and new city, calling regularly to check on Lily and gradually rebuilding our sibling relationship on healthier terms. He'd even started therapy, determined to break the dysfunctional patterns he'd observed in our family. The most unexpected change had been in me. Through the ordeal, I'd discovered a strength and resolve I hadn't known I possessed. What began as a personal fight to protect my daughter had evolved into something larger. I started a blog documenting our journey, which quickly connected me to other parents of premature infants navigating similar challenges. What began as a way to process my own experience became a lifeline for others, and eventually grew into a nonprofit support network, providing resources, education, and advocacy for families of medically fragile children. Using my newfound voice, I'd worked with hospital administrators to develop better protocols for home care training, ensuring that all family members involved in a preemie's care received proper education. Several hospitals had implemented our Know Before You Go program, requiring all caregivers to demonstrate competency with medical equipment before a fragile infant was discharged. On Lily's first birthday, a milestone that once seemed so uncertain, we celebrated with a small gathering of the people who had truly supported us through our darkest days. Jeff's parents, Ethan, Laura, and her family, Dr. Chen, and several families we'd met through the support network. As I watched Lily smiling in Jeff's arms, babbling happily, and reaching for the single candle on her cake, I reflected on the painful lesson I'd learned. Sometimes protecting your child means drawing hard boundaries, even with family. Sometimes it means fighting battles you never wanted to fight. And sometimes it means redefining what family really means, not simply shared blood, but shared values, respect, and unwavering support when it matters most. "Make a wish, sweetheart," I whispered to Lily as Jeff held her close to the candle. But looking around at the room full of people who genuinely cared for us, at my daughter's healthy, happy face, and at the unexpected path that had led us to this moment of peace, I realized my wishes had already come true. We had survived, we had thrived, and we had built something beautiful from the broken pieces of what came before. What's your experience with family boundaries? Have you ever had to make the difficult choice to distance yourself from toxic family members to protect yourself or your children? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share to help others who might be facing similar challenges. Thank you for listening, and remember, true family is defined by actions, not blood.